Russia is negative and the U.S. answers. The Americans' response to Russia's security demands does not satisfy Moscow. Russia will prepare its response in the coming days. So they're going to start off with the equipment that they're sending out to parts of Ukraine. They also said that China could be involved in shaping the response as well, which is weird because China warns the U.S. of a full-blown military conflict over Taiwan. Turkey is saying they're being pushed into a devastating Russian-Turkish war. Erdogan rushed to join NATO, saying Russia would be reckless in starting military conflict in Ukraine. In the case, Turkey would do what is necessary as a member of the alliance. But the truth is, he is very afraid of the idea of conflict in the Mediterranean. Cold War days, Pentagon, U.S. landing in Europe, U.S. bases at war. We activated 8 states to send out military to Europe in the coming days. Russia says no war unless U.S. escalates.
As the Secretary of Defense has noted, we continue to provide military material support to Ukraine, along with many other countries from NATO. And we are ready, capable, and prepared to uphold our obligation under treaty to NATO. As mentioned by the Secretary, an attack against one NATO ally is an attack against all. NATO has significant military capability. NATO has approximately 130 plus brigades of maneuver forces, not including U.S. forces, 93 squadrons of high-end fighters, 4 carriers, many more surface combatants. The military capability of NATO is very, very significant. In addition to bordering Russia and Belarus and Moldova, Ukraine has a border with 4. As the Secretary...
Shit just got crazy. So Lloyd and General Milley warned of war if Russia invades. Mark Milley is our top general, and Lloyd Austin is the chief of the Pentagon. I've been warning that something weird is about to go down because their buildup is different from their language. They're saying Russia's after Ukraine, but they're building up around the world. Like, they're building up on our coast, they're building up in Europe, like, they're building up everywhere. The 4th batch of U.S. military aid arrives in Ukraine, and this time it's 81 tons of ammunition. Last time, it was 200 tons of ammunition. Russian senator says Washington is heading for direct confrontation and starting global confrontation. And whatever note they gave to Russia, they told Russia to keep it a secret. They're saying Russia is starting this shit. Dude, they're trying to drag Russia into a war with us. Then they started talking about Article 5. They must have joined.
In the last 24 hours, there's been an increased Russian buildup of troops on the Ukraine border. Also, the U.S. military naming the 10 U.S. bases where some 8,500 troops are on heightened alert to deploy to Eastern Europe. CBS's Holly Williams reports from Ukraine's capital of Kyiv.
The U.S. says the ball is now in Russia's court. And today, Moscow continued its build-up near Ukraine's northern border in Belarus for what it says are military drills. Russia's demanding security guarantees, including the rolling back of NATO forces from Eastern Europe and a ban on Ukraine joining the alliance. The US and its NATO allies say they cannot agree to either. The American ambassador to Russia hand-delivered a written response yesterday. Today, the Kremlin said the US had not addressed its main concerns and likened the current situation to the Cold War.
Russia-Ukraine situation. There is no question that American lives are going to be at stake if conflict breaks out. There's Americans in Ukraine and they're on high alert. This could come home. U.S. just shipped a bunch of anti-tank missiles, grenade launchers, artillery arms to Ukraine as Russia maintains 100,000 soldiers on the border. Biden vows to deploy troops as well. They really are forcing Russia's hand. $200 million shipment of American military aid to Ukraine. Chinese scientists developed 6G technology for hypersonic weapons communication and tracking. Not only are these for their hypersonic missiles, but it's for their laser devices as well. Pentagon to host a high-level meeting to light a fire and speed up hypersonic weapon development. And they keep saying we're not as advanced as Russia or China as far as hypersonic programs. The U.S. is also warning Russia of war, so this is getting crazy. NATO chief stresses unity in face of Russia-China threat. They do not share our values. NATO head warns it's ready for dialogue or combative actions as Russia mules over its next move. As Russia-Ukraine tensions rise, U.S. stress tests new nuclear war plan. As Russia threats to Ukraine continue to persist, and as the Biden administration contemplates America's responses, nuclear weapons lurk in the background. The nuclear option is postured to deter aggression even in Europe, the fact made clear by a large-scale global lightning military exercise last year, which was based upon a Russian invasion of the Baltic states, a scenario that ultimately escalates the use of nuclear weapons. British intel claims Russia nuke sent towards Ukraine for first strike, but new fears that British to use nuke in a false flag and blame Russia. That would be interesting. Now, this could set up a false flag attack, the point that Americans is refusing to leave Ukraine. Now they can blame Russia if something happens.
You hear those war drums? I do. So, if Putin is bluffing us all, why is the Russian military building up its blood supply? Folks, blood supply is critical during combat for the soldiers who get injured. Why would they be doing this if it's all just a bluff? If Russia is not planning to invade the Ukraine, what's going on? Stay tuned, follow, subscribe.
Confirmed tonight that U.S. troops will be heading to Eastern Europe and NATO countries amid heightened tensions between Russia and Ukraine. He was asked by a reporter about any U.S. troop movements this evening.
Have you decided how soon you would be moving U.S. troops to Eastern Europe?
I'll be moving U.S. troops to Eastern Europe and the NATO countries in the near term.
Earlier today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky downplayed fears of an imminent war between Ukraine and Russia, urging the West not to panic over the escalating situation at the border. Meanwhile, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow doesn't want a war, but he also warned the West not to trample on his country's security interests after the U.S. delivered its response to Russia on the Ukraine crisis.
We got the answers only the day before yesterday. They are written in Western style and make things as clear as mud in many aspects. But
Biden confirmed.
China threatens Australia with missile attack. The Chinese Communist Party threatened Australia with retaliatory punishment with missile strikes on the military facilities and relevant key facilities on Australian soil. If we were to send Australian troops to coordinate with the U.S. and wage war with China over Taiwan. Wow. Escalation, Russian fleet on blackout mission. Europe, U.S. serious incident with Norway and Sweden. Moscow blocks the Atlantic and threatens Russian fleet inside the Irish Seas episode with French ships. War has been sounded in the U.S. and NATO. Yet thanks to this Russian fleet, it was on its way to Ireland to do drills and exercises, y'all know, the ones they were supposed to shoot in their waters. But at the same time, France and Norway is giving them issues. U.S. requests to Turkey close straits on Russian ships, allow NATO fleet to enter Mediterranean. Turkey says no. Shit's getting crazier by the day. There's more. So let's read a little more into this escalation with Russian fleet on a blackout mission to Europe, U.S. serious incident with Norway and Sweden. In a scenario of total conflict with NATO, the Russian fleet are exercising with the thermometer of the crisis hitting red as there were incidents with both Sweden and Norway. Russia's also doing cable disconnection rehearsals. Scenarios pursued by the Russian fleet within an exclusive economic zone of Ireland has to do with opposing a blackout on the telecommunications connection between Europe and the United States. It's crazy that's where Russia is hitting to do their exercises. Very interesting. And then they show you the area where exactly they're doing the exercises. According to Russian media, electric warfare system hit a Norwegian F-35 in a U.S. radar. The same Russian sources reported that electronic warfare systems began to be used against NATO targets. Wow. British major military deployment to defend Europe. British military forces are said to be deployed to strengthen Eastern Europe's borders in face of rising Russian aggression. The British government say in a statement that the UK officials will be deployed to Brussels to finalize the details of the offer with NATO next week, and ministers will discuss the military options on Monday. Wow. And this is all the shit that they're deploying out. Here's more. This shit's crazy. 6 Russian landing ships that left the Baltic Sea have now entered the Mediterranean. The arrival of these warships comes under a major naval maneuvers and concerns that they could take part in operations against Ukraine. Interesting. The U.S. carrier Strike Group is also in the Mediterranean. The UK also has an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean that's on standby to move within hours as tensions with Russia rise further. Russia is already in Cuba and Venezuela. Belarus is emptying their bases too. NATO calls on Greece and Cyprus, terrifying concentration of power in the Mediterranean. Moscow studies ignition scenario. Moscow is studying a nightmarish scenario for the Russian-NATO relations as a scene of conflict is formed, Mediterranean and Black Sea. I already told you guys that the UK has sent their warship, the HMS Prince of Wales, to join the USS Harry S. Truman, which are both aircraft carriers. Russia says peace with the U.S. only after a new world order. NATO will be beaten to change the security architecture of Europe. They are even saying that this would be a long-term crisis centered on Europe. Then it says we will not only have a conventional crisis, but in the long run, in the next context of gradual escalation, even nuclear threats with hybrid strikes will enter European countries, bordering Ukraine or Belarus. This is why the United States and Britain are dramatically strengthening their forces in Eastern Europe. The U.S. threatened Russia at the United Nations today as well. U.S. rotates troops to NATO battle group equipment in Poland as Russia masses troops on Ukraine's border. As Russia continues to threaten Ukraine with troops along the border, the U.S. military on Sunday sent fresh troops to NATO battle group based in neighboring Poland, made up of troops from Croatia, Romania, and the United Kingdom. Here's on my military website so y'all can see that the Ukrainian media is also picking up on this. Ukrainians rally on Kiev's central square to thank Western nations for aid. Russia sent 5,000 troops, ballistic missiles, special forces to Belarus, 30,000 expected in February, U.S. representative to UN. Then this just talks about how much shit Russia's actually sending near Ukraine. It was such a big problem that the United States and the UK had to bring it up at the United Nations today, saying that if Russia further invades Ukraine, none of us will be able to say we didn't see it coming. North Korea tested a missile that was able to hit Guam.
As the Secretary of Defense has noted, we continue to provide military material support to Ukraine, along with many other countries from NATO.
I see this a lot, that Ukraine isn't a NATO member. But what if they were a NATO member? Back in June 14, 2021, the president of Ukraine says country will become a NATO member. Now listen to this tweet. Commend at NATO partners, understanding all the risks and challenges we face. NATO leaders confirmed that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance, and the MAP is an integral part of the membership process, deserves due appreciation of his role in assuring Euro-Atlantic security. So he made like he joined NATO then. The next day, Biden's kind of slapped it down, but he didn't say yes or no. Fast forward to November 29, 2021, they said that they will become NATO members, Georgia and Ukraine. That was by the United States. Is that why NATO's building around Ukraine and giving them weapons?
Russia is keeping its troops on the move and the world guessing. This time, it's anti-submarine drills in the Norwegian Sea. Norway is a NATO member. Russia has roughly 130,000 troops and tanks, warships and missiles at the ready near Ukraine's borders. In Ukraine's capital, Kiev, veterans are training civilians in combat. But Ukraine's President Zelensky says he doesn't think Russia will invade. Russia insists it won't. In Ukrainian frontline cities like Mariupol, close to the Russian border, people are getting nervous. At a church service here, Ukrainian Orthodox, the bishop urges people to have faith and pray for the Ukrainian military. As the congregation leaves, Maria plays a bandura to keep their spirits high.
Russia threatens military action if its demands are ignored, U.S. envoy and UN Security Council. The representative said, recently, Russia has been threatening to take military action if its demands are not met. If Russia invades Ukraine, the consequences would be terrible. And by the way, this was at the UN. The U.S. called for an urgent meeting between all members today. Russia allows Iran airlift loaded with arms to land at Russian base in Syria. A stunning development in the Middle East diplomacy took place Sunday. Russia allowed an Iranian jet carrying vast amounts of arms to land in the Russian air base in Khmeimim. Previous Iranian deliveries have been bombed by Israel, but this cannot be. Now that Russia is allowing Iranian cargo jets to bring arms into its airspace, Israel's stuck. Israel cannot attack anything on the base because to do so would be an act of war against Russia. Talk about being in a tough spot. But let's see how the endgame turns out.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. This could be a critical week as the threat of war looms in Ukraine. Tonight, President Biden is warning Russia that it will face swift and severe consequences should it attack, adding that the U.S. and its allies are continuing to prepare for every scenario. The Cold War foes faced off today at a meeting at the UN Security Council. The U.S. called for the de-escalation of the largest mobilization of troops and weapons in Europe in decades. And there's some breaking news. This CBS News has learned Russia just delivered a written response to a U.S. proposal aimed at lowering those tensions. CBS's Weijia Zhang is going to lead off our coverage with the news at the White House. Good evening, Weijia.
Good evening to you, Nora. Tonight, the Pentagon is seeing increasing Russian military activity all around Ukraine. In fact, that is what led to the showdown at the UN between Russia and the U.S. Even though President Biden is still pushing for a diplomatic solution, he's also clear-eyed about the potential for war. The Russian military continues to flex its muscle around Ukraine, holding exercises on land, in the air, and on the water. Vladimir Putin has denied any interest in invading. Today, President Biden said the U.S. is ready either way.
Russia is continuing its buildup of its forces around Ukraine. We are ready no matter what happens.
During a meeting of the UN Security Council, Russia blamed the U.S. for provoking escalation, again insisting Moscow has no plans to attack.
We fully understand that the desire of our American colleagues to whip up hysterics.
The U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, demanded to know why then are there more than 100,000 Russian troops surrounding Ukraine on three sides.
Imagine how uncomfortable you would be if you had 100,000 troops sitting on your border in the way that these troops are sitting on the border with Ukraine.
U.S. officials say there is new evidence that Russia intends to expand its presence to more than 30,000 troops near the Belarus border. NATO Secretary General warned that Russia may use joint training exercises with Belarus, set to begin in 10 days as a disguise to attack.
That was actually what happened back in 2014 when they annexed Crimea.
Ukraine's defense minister today celebrated the latest American ammunition shipment, which comes as civilian volunteers across the country, some with no military experience, are training to fight the Russians.
Our generation is fucked the more the years go on. So if you don't know about the issue between U.S. and Russia are in a bit of a heated argument right now. And everybody's worried about another war going on, you know, the war draft, whatever. So what does Gen Z do? They go to Vladimir Putin's Instagram. Just look at these comments. Laddie, please stop this. At least let us finish the Netflix show we're watching. Big Zaddy Putin, please stop the war. Let Netflix and chill together, Big Zaddy. Vlad Daddy, please don't bomb the UK. XOXOXO. This isn't you, Pookie. And there's just hundreds of comments like these. And this is literally Vladimir Putin's fucking Instagram. Yeah, this generation's gonna be the end of us. You guys might as well start packing your bags and getting ready.
Russia hits back with sanctions. Will ban 5 years any corporation donating to Congress. Russia seems now ready to take on U.S. sanctions head-on. Will force many U.S. Congress representatives to quit. This is just the beginning of bad news that I have. U.S. moving shiploads of heavy armor out of San Diego. The armed forces of the United States have begun moving more than 45 M1 Abrams, main battle tanks, and more than 80 Bradley fighting vehicles from the port of San Diego today. Where in the Pacific may this armor be going? The armor above translates to a tank battalion and roughly 2 merchandised battalions. That's some heavy-duty firepower. The U.S. moves towards multiple fronts just keep getting worse and worse. And this is supposed to head out to the Pacific? For who? China? Apparently Britain, Poland, and Ukraine is signing a defense treaty. Oh, there's a lot going on.
Russia deploying more fighter jets and conducting anti-submarine naval drills. President Biden tonight saying the U.S. is prepared if diplomacy fails.
With Russia's continuing its buildup of its forces around Ukraine, we are ready no matter what happens.
That after a high-stakes showdown between the U.S. and Russia at the United Nations.
The situation we're facing in Europe is urgent and dangerous. Russia's aggression today not only threatens Ukraine, it also threatens Europe.
Russia tried unsuccessfully to block the meeting before it even began, insisting it does not plan to invade Ukraine. Russia's ambassador today accusing the U.S. of trying to, quote, whip up hysterics.
This is of great harm, this hysterica, to Ukraine itself.
But Ukraine challenging Russia.
If Russian officials are serious when they say they don't want a new war, Russia must continue diplomatic engagement and pull back military forces it amassed along Ukraine's borders.
The Ukrainians on alert for an invasion as U.S. military advisors train their troops. And in Kyiv, Ukrainian veterans are training civilians to fight. In Congress, there's a bipartisan bill to impose sanctions on Russia, including measures that could go into effect immediately.
Russia has already taken provocative action that has caused damage to the Ukrainian economy that merits consequence.
And Andrew, we just learned that Russia has now sent new written responses to the U.S. Do we know what they said?
Well, Lester, it's a response to the U.S. arms control proposals to de-escalate the crisis, and that's going to be the subject of Secretary of State Tony Blinken's planned talk with the Russian foreign minister tomorrow. At the same time, one ominous sign, Russia has now moved blood supplies they would need in an invasion to its troops on the border.
In these images released by Russia's defense ministry, Russian soldiers are seen in a military camp in Belarus. Moscow says its troops are there for joint military drills with Belarusian forces scheduled for next week, but Washington claims they've been deployed there to prepare for a potential invasion of Ukraine.
Russia has also moved nearly 5,000 troops into Belarus with short-range ballistic missiles, special forces, and anti-aircraft batteries. We've seen evidence that Russia intends to expand that presence to more than 30,000 troops near the Belarus-Ukraine border, less than 2 hours north of Kyiv, by early February.
The border between Belarus and Ukraine stretches for more than 1,000 kilometers, and Russian President Vladimir Putin is one of the few allies of his Belarusian counterpart, Alexander Lukashenko. Moscow supported Lukashenko during his government's violent crackdown on mass protests following his disputed re-election in 2020. And Minsk now says it will support its partner in return in the event of an attack on Russia.
Так будет война или нет? Да, она будет. Но только в двух случаях. Если против Беларуси будет...
Britain and Poland, Ukraine defense treaty. The same source says that some very important agreement will be signed. A defense treaty has already been signed between Britain and Ukraine. At the same time, in a press conference, the head of the Polish National Security Office, Paweł Solech, revealed that Poland will provide anti-aircraft systems and other lethal weapons to Ukraine. The first consignment will leave soon and will contain large quantities of ammunition. So listen, folks, you know, they don't really need to declare Ukraine a NATO member. They're doing everything anyway to support Ukraine, folks. Now Poland will be sending United States anti-aircraft systems and lethal weapons to Ukraine through Poland. The decision to provide military assistance to Ukraine was taken jointly with President Andrzej Duda. These are thousands of ammunition, weapons, and anti-aircraft systems. The proposal has already been delivered to the Ukrainian side. Poland is also ready to provide humanitarian assistance to Ukraine including the funds needed for evacuation and health care.
Hi, welcome to my channel. Now, I get what you're saying. Ukraine came out and said, well, nothing's happening. You know, they're just hyping this up and people are living their life like another day. Well, when you go to war, don't you know that your government kind of keeps that shit away from you? Just like the United States, if we went to war, Russia or China, we would not know about it. Probably to the last minute. But anyways, this is a Ukrainian media website right now. This gives hourly updates to what's going on in Ukraine. For some reason, some countries have their dates backwards, but this is February 1st, 2022, 11 o'clock. Number of Ukrainian servicemen to increase by 100,000. Why is you increasing your servicemen if nothing's going on? Ukraine and Poland prime ministers call on Germany not to launch the Nord Stream 2. Prime minister arrives in Kiev. Alliance of Poland, Ukraine, and UK will protect us from Russia's long reach. Ukraine said there was no threat, so why do you need protection? We're dragging them into conflict. I ignore the mental game because I already know what's going on. I've already put this on this channel, and I do have videos that's taken down that I put more information on. But yes, the US media is launching a propaganda campaign against Russia right now. They want to see how our citizens would feel about us going into a full-blown war with Russia, which wouldn't be good at all. Now, at the same time, they've been marking Russia as the bad guy. They've been building up on Russia's border. They've been sending all types of shit to Ukraine. They are trying to drag Russia into this war. Oh yeah, remember when they said yesterday that Russia sent a written response back? They didn't. Tuesday reports of a written response to proposal are not true by Moscow's deputy foreign minister. And that's from this article, as Putin says, the US and West have ignored his demands to keep NATO out of Ukraine, as they deliver about 500 tons of weapons to Kiev. Now Putin's saying that we can drag them into a war. The US want to fight, not Russia.
As you know, we were given promises not to move NATO infrastructure to the east, not a single inch eastwards. You all know that. You all are well aware. And now we see where missiles are. Poland, Romania, Baltic countries. So they said one thing, they did another thing. As our people say, so we were basically swindled. We were lied to. Okay, that's fine. And then the United States withdrew from the anti-missile defense treaty. We tried to convince them not to do this. It was one of the fundamental agreements about the global security. Nevertheless, the United States did what they did. They withdrew from it. And now the missile launch system are in Romania and in Poland. They're going to be there soon, if not already there yet. And there are Mk-41 launchers. And you can deploy Tomahawks there. So it's not anti-missiles. These are strike systems that are going to cover our territory 1,000 kilometers deep. Is this not a threat to us? Now they say that the next step is Ukraine. So they must approve it to join NATO. So listen to me carefully. In Ukrainian doctrines, it says that they want to take back Crimea. And if they have to, they will use military force to that. So these are not just words. That's part of their doctrine. Now let's assume that Ukraine is the NATO state. So they are pumped with weapons. They have modern offensive weapons like they do it in Poland, in Europe. And now they start an operation in Crimea. I'm not even talking about the Donbass here. That's a sovereign Russian territory. So it's a non-starter for us. So let's imagine that Ukraine is a NATO state and they start this operation. So now do we have to start the war against the NATO alliance? Did anyone think about that? I don't think so.
I was just about to leave this place. Then I got word that Russia just attacked Israel's biggest airport. And yes, I got this from a Greek website that I clearly had to translate into English. Moscow has unleashed a powerful electronic war on Israel, causing GPS systems to go crazy, paralyzing Israel's national airspace and closing the country's largest airport, Ben Gurion. The event is directly related to developments in Ukraine and the accumulation of a huge NATO naval power in the Mediterranean. As we have mentioned, Moscow has analyzed a scenario of a nation in the Mediterranean. Under no circumstances would he want Israel to get involved. Moscow's position is clear. Stay neutral in the U.S.-NATO conflict. Damn, shut down their whole airport. That's crazy, bro. The conflict will change the form of NATO in Europe. The Americans are leaving in Belarus. They're already treating Ukraine like a NATO member. Y'all don't think they're going to try to actually defend them? Oh, really, guys? I'm a liar because you can't find it? How about not searching on Google so much, please? You're making yourself look very, very bad. They actually did do this today, and Israel actually called Russia. If you look on Google, this is the only shit you're going to find. So stop calling my shit false and learn how to look up your information. Jesus. This shit's a lot deeper than you guys think.
Hey guys, my name is Javante. People seem to have the wrong idea about me. Just because I spread scary news and I tell you the true news that's out there doesn't mean I'm here to scare you. I have been doing research since I was 16 years old. I've done research back since the Cold War. I know about the CIA and ISIS. I know about a lot of fucking stuff. And my main thing on this channel is to spread love, peace, and unity. But in the process of that is awareness. People need to be aware to certain things that's going on. Now, I know I'm not going to always have the best news, but I also have comedy skits on here. I also have good news on here. You know, even when things settle down, I put that on here. Like, I don't hide shit from nobody, you know. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here with you. I'm on your side. We're on the same team. But I want people to know what's going on out there, you know? It's getting crazy. But anyways, I love you guys. Just had to give this message out. Have a great day.
США вышли из договора по противоракетной обороне.
Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the U.S. and its Western allies on Tuesday of ignoring Russia's security concerns and deliberately creating a scenario designed to lure Russia into war. In his first direct public comments on the Ukraine crisis for nearly 6 weeks, a defiant Putin showed no signs of backing down from security demands that Western countries have called non-starters and possible excuses to launch an invasion.
Но уже сейчас
we already can see that fundamental Russian concerns were ignored.
Russia is demanding that NATO halt any further enlargement, bar Ukraine from ever joining the alliance, and pull back forces and weaponry from Eastern European countries. Putin said Washington is not primarily concerned with Ukraine's security, but with containing Russia.
Вот в чем дело. В этом смысле
that is the problem. In this context, Ukraine is just a tool to reach this goal.
Russia.
Вот в чем дело. В этом смысле
that is the problem. In this context, Ukraine is just a tool to reach this goal. It can be reached by various means, by drawing us into a military conflict and making their European allies impose against us those tough sanctions the U.S. talks about today.
Russia has massed more than 100,000 troops on the Ukrainian border, and Western countries say they fear Putin may be planning to invade. Russia denies this, but has said it could take unspecified military action unless its security demands are met. Western countries have rushed to show solidarity with Ukraine. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Tuesday met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv and accused Putin of holding a gun to Ukraine's head to demand changes to the security architecture in Europe. He also warned that any Russian invasion would lead to a military and humanitarian disaster.
And there are 200,000 men and women under arms in Ukraine. They will put up a very, very fierce and bloody resistance. And I think that parents, mothers in Russia should reflect on that fact. And I hope very much that President Putin steps back from the path of conflict and that we engage in dialogue.
Zelensky, who has repeatedly played down the prospect of an imminent invasion, signed a decree on Tuesday to boost his armed forces by 100,000 troops over 3 years. He urged lawmakers to stay calm and avoid panic, saying he had ordered the troop increase, quote, not because we will soon have a war, but so that soon and in the future there will be peace in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Spanish newspaper El País has published documents it says are confidential letters sent by the U.S. and the NATO alliance to Russia. The leaked documents detail the U.S. and NATO's formal response to a list of Moscow's demands, chief among them that NATO rule out admitting Ukraine to the security alliance. They shed more light on the high-stakes diplomacy taking place behind the scenes, including potential nuclear disarmament and trust-building agreements. For more on this, we can go over to Terry Schultz, who's reporting for us in Brussels. Hi, Terry. So what stands out to you from these leaked documents? Are there any clear differences between the U.S. and NATO responses?
Hi, Sumi. The first thing that stood out to me was just how similar the documents are to exactly what we were told were in these letters. Both NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg and U.S. officials had given public statements saying that this is how they responded to Russia. And I'm not saying I didn't believe them, but I'm still struck by just how much we did know about what these letters were and therefore why they were kept classified. The NATO letter is just 2 pages long and quite general, while the U.S. response is 4 pages, because the U.S. has more details with which to respond. It has missiles, which NATO doesn't, and Russia asked more of the United States. So the U.S. letter talks about what the U.S. is willing to do if Russia reciprocates, including going back to arms control agreements that have fallen by the wayside, limiting and being more transparent about troop movements, which Russia does not do. I was also struck by sort of this scolding nature in the U.S. letter in particular. It reminded Russia that it invaded Crimea and illegally annexed it, that it has troops in Ukraine, in the eastern Ukraine, which Russia denies, and also that it has troops still in Georgia and in Moldova, which were not there at the invitation of those governments.
And Terry, tell us again how the Russian side has responded to these letters.
Well, besides what you heard from President Putin, that was reiterated again in a letter from Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, which was posted on the Russian Foreign Ministry website. And it reiterates that Russia feels this zero-sum situation, that any reinforcement, any reassurance sent to its neighbors is destabilizing for Russia. So Lavrov says once again that the West does not understand the Russian position, and that if these members are allowed to have NATO forces on their territory, that it is not acceptable to Russia. This is something where there is a clear difference of opinion that simply I don't see how it can be bridged.
So taken together, the letters and the response from Russia, does this do anything to change the diplomatic state of play in this standoff?
I don't think so. Again, we've heard everyone's positions publicly.
Tonight for a simple reason, because together we have to save America. There's never been a time like this. There's never been a time. What Joe Biden and the Pelosi Schumer Congress have done to our country in just 1 year is a travesty of the highest order. Inflation is skyrocketing. Gas prices are soaring. Supply chains are crumbling. Can you believe what's happening? You can't get anything. The shelves are empty. I did a book. They can't publish it anymore. They can't get the paper, the glue, the ink. Go out and buy it. You'll like it. Murders are surging. Illegal aliens are pouring in by the millions and millions. China is threatening Taiwan. Iran is on the cusp of a nuclear bomb. Russia may take over Ukraine. Do you hear that crowd back there? Can you believe it? I was just informed by a wonderful local politician. This is the biggest crowd of its kind in the history of Texas. Look at it. And the fake news will say a smattering of people showed up. The lines are going back 30 miles long. The cars are still coming. So I want to thank everybody, and it's incredible. Incredible. North Korea is testing at a level like never before. The way they withdrew from Afghanistan was catastrophic and image-changing for the United States of America. Image-changing. That did so much to hurt our country. That was a moment that was so embarrassing and so horrible. And Joe Biden's weakness and incompetence is creating a very real risk of World War III. Look at what's going on. This would have never happened with us. It was never even a thought, would have never happened. If you care about your future, your family, and your country, then you have no choice. This November, you have to throw these raving lunatics the hell out of power and elect strong, smart, tough Republicans who will restore.
Vladimir Putin accused the U.S. and its allies yesterday of ignoring Russia's concerns that Ukraine may join NATO, the Western military alliance. Putin has deployed at least 100,000 troops around Ukraine. The U.S. has now sent fighter jets and support units to Estonia, the NATO ally that used to be part of the Soviet Union. Charlie D'Agata is in Tallinn, that's Estonia's capital, with more on this story. Charlie, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Gail. Sub-freezing temperatures are a far cry from North Carolina, where this squadron is based. Around 120 U.S. military personnel taking part in this mission right on Russia's doorstep. American F-15 Screaming Eagles soar into darkening skies in a show of U.S. military firepower. The message to NATO allies here: we've got your back. And to Russia, we're watching. The U.S. Air Force's 336 Fighter Squadron taking part in an enhanced air policing mission. And it's about reassuring your NATO allies.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a team effort from the NATO alliance.
Here's why it matters. The Baltic states are sandwiched between Russia and its ally Belarus and the Baltic Sea. The Russian military has already deployed fighter jets to the region, launched naval exercises in the Baltic Sea, and rolled missile systems into Belarus. This mission was created in a direct response.
Tell me something, TikTok. How in the hell is this supposed to feed thousands of people that live in this city? This place seems to be filled with pork, but where the fuck is the chicken? Just like Walmart. Walmart took the chicken out. Dude, we have a shortage going on, man. This is like the third store, bro. Look at this. This is a chicken out, right? What the fuck is this doing in here? Oh my god. Then they said there was a corn shortage, and why the fuck is this in the chicken area? Why is there veggies in the Wait, what the fuck is this? Better stock up on your noodles. For real. Because that's going to be next. All the survival shit that stay around for years, they coming for you. Telling you now. How does this sound, TikTok? UK military warns of nuclear attack from space. Such an event would be a permanent kill scenario, a new report cautions. Oh, but things are about to get so much more interesting. Poland confirms the supply of Manpads air defense missile systems to Ukraine. If nothing's going to happen to Ukraine, then why are they doing this? The Royal Air Force scrambles Typhoon jets to respond to approaching Russian bombers. The Royal Air Force said 4 Russian Bear aircraft were intercepted and escorted. Biden orders nearly 3,000 U.S. troops to Eastern Europe to counter Russia. The United States will send nearly 3,000 extra troops to Poland, Romania to reinforce Eastern European NATO allies in the face of what Washington describes as Russian threat to invade Ukraine. You guys sure there's not going to be a conflict? What is coming? Britain and Ukraine warn of large-scale European war with Russia. Yeah, this is definitely the month.
This is Dabu 7. A heads up for the folks down in North Carolina that could be downwind or around this fertilizer plant that could explode at any time. Now, when the initial word went out, I think people thought they got the fire out, it's over. That's not the case with this situation. They're saying that there has been a 36-hour window for an explosion to happen at this plant. This is an out-of-control fire that has forced the firefighters there to retreat, and then it led local officials to evacuate 6,500 people that live around this region. I'm going to show you some video footage here in just a second from the air, but this is out of control and a heads up for anyone downwind or around this site. Here is an aerial shot of that area, and you can see that it is billowing this toxic smoke. You can see the city way off in the background there in that shot from that end.
You see, this is what people don't understand. It's not only that he's sending 3,000 troops, but he has 8,500 on standby, and then 50,000 on top of that. So, you see, this is what...
So we have another aircraft carrier getting pretty close to Russia. China and U.S. at high risk of stumbling into conflict over military misfire. Leaders of both countries have said they don't want war and relations are better than they were several years ago. But they can still lose their sense and get into a fight. Want to see something even more crazy? Biden and Putin both say they don't want war, but they're inching closer anyways. Did they just say the same thing about China and the United States? We have three nations set to join the anti-Russia security pact. Britain, Poland, and Ukraine will collaborate in a new move designed to confront Moscow. The EU and US leaders are playing a dangerous game, says Russian ambassador to Ireland, saying the European and US leaders are playing a dangerous game of political shadowboxing, and that they have reached a level of absurdity. What I said just came true. Alright guys, Russia's on the move. Russians dead, Europe and Germany fuel network, attack on RAF base in Cyprus. The Pentagon has sounded alarm as multiple incidents have occurred between Russia and NATO countries, accumulating in the heart of the European and Germany fuel network. Alright, let's go through this. Russian package in a nuclear strike against Britain. A large Russian package of 2 Russian strategic bombers Tu-95 Bear-H, an air supply tanker, an AWACS A-50 radar, and 2 Tu-142s with fighter jets proceeded with a virtual nuclear bombardment of Britain. And as y'all can see down there, those are the jets that got escorted by the UK. Russia has also paralyzed the German fuel supplies. Russia attacks the Royal Air Force Base in Cyprus, which is a British base, and Europe's trade network. Alright, let's go through this. Russian package in a nuclear strike against Britain. A large Russian package of 2 Russian strategic... Is this why the UK is warning of a nuclear strike for space? Really makes you think, huh? What the fuck is going on? Colossal mobilization with 50 ships, the 5th Fleet blockade in the Straits in conflict with Iran and Russia? For the first time in the history of Israel, the country participates in a colossal naval mobilization, typically the largest on the planet, with participations of 60 countries in the Red Sea, the U.S. 5th Fleet, and NATO forces. The exercise, notice they're saying exercise again, resembles a state of emergency with regional conflict during which all countries are involved must defend themselves against a common enemy. More specifically, Israel is participating in the U.S.-led Red Sea naval exercise involving nearly 60 countries and international organizations, some of which do not recognize the Jewish state. According to the statement issued by the U.S., 9,000 people, 50 warships, and 60 countries will be involved. South China Sea, Black Sea, and Mediterranean Sea. Here comes war. Here is part 2 of my last video. The map of the exercise is typical. The countries are divided into 5 task forces. 1 eastern, 1 southern, 1 western, 1 northern. While there is also a mixed 2 scenarios to why this is happening. The first scenario, which is being photographed by Israeli sources, is that it is a war preparation due to Iran, which the U.S. to deploy fighter jets, Navy destroyer to UAE after missile attacks. These were by Iran-backed forces after Biden said that the U.S. will leave Yemen, which Iran did say they would step up the conflict. The second scenario is that a global U.S. naval mobilization due to Russia is underway, and Russian fleet is currently spread around the world. I said this so many times, as Russia is blaming Ukraine for its own impending destruction, and Ukraine is saying a full war is... Here is part. So, if nothing's going on right now, why is Australia's largest warship dead in the water off Tonga? And they're saying it might be an electric weapons attack. Australia's largest warship, the HMAS, is reportedly completely disabled in the South Pacific Ocean off the island of Tonga. The situation is allegedly so desperate, not even the communication gears is working aboard the vessel. It's either you wake up now or you probably never will. There's some sinister shit going on in the world right now, and they're not telling us much. I gotta go through international news just to tell you guys this shit. Other countries' news, not even our own. This is crazy. This is MSN and 9 News, which is the United States news. China steps in as Australian aid mission to Tonga stumbles. Australia's stumbling aid to Tonga hit by power outage and coronavirus outbreak aboard a Navy warship delivering supplies. Risk being overshadowed by Chinese relief efforts. I have no problem proving my news to you guys. This is what I'm here for. But next time, just look it up, man. Don't deny me. Go look it up for yourself. We all have the internet. I'm going to attempt to put this out again. I've tried to post this 3 times already. All I'll say is 2. And there's more. And more. The reason they're at 2 is because the Pentagon has stated the United States is on high alert waiting for Russia, President Vladimir Putin, to make his next move. Also, Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs have put out a statement that Vladimir Putin will be visiting China on the invitation of the Chinese to attend the opening ceremony of the 2022 Winter Olympic Games in Beijing. I put this out earlier that Britain's Air Force has intercepted 4 Russian strategic bombers approaching the UK's area of interest. Then a new email alert has been issued by the United States Embassy in Ukraine, has advised the Americans to contact the U.S. Embassy if they need financial assistance to purchase an airplane ticket out of the country. Then Russia has Ukraine surrounded. Man. Large group of Russian warships with Caliber missiles spotted off UK. A group of Russian warships, large anti-submarine ship, missile cruiser, Admiral Fleet, and a group of escort ships were spotted off the east coast of Great Britain. Appearance of a large number of ships carrying various types of missile weapons, including Caliber cruise missiles near the borders of the United Kingdom, forced London to send its ships and aircraft to monitor the movement of Russian warships. Wow. Russia is also sending Raptor combat boats to the Sea of Azov. Russia starts redeploying combat boats to the Sea of Azov. Russia started taking measures to redeploy Raptor combat boats on the Don. Yeah, Russia's definitely on the move, guys. By the way, Ukraine's president is now saying full-fledged war coming. But they're saying this ain't going to just be between Ukraine and Russia. This is going to be a European war, full-fledged war.
The U.S. and its allies in a united show of force facing aggression from Russia. The USS Harry S. Truman is in Europe, refining cooperation with NATO allies to make sure the alliance can operate more coherently, says Naval Flight Officer Jeanette Lazaro.
We just go out there, integrate, talk to different NATO partners, anybody we are working with, and we work to kind of smooth the communication processes.
As Russia continues to amass troops near the border with Ukraine, the U.S. says it will help further strengthen the NATO alliance. This is the first time since the Cold War that a full carrier strike group has been placed under NATO command, with ships from various NATO countries flanking the Truman. The U.S. kept the Harry S. Truman in Europe longer than planned as the standoff with Russia intensifies to reassure America's allies the U.S. is fully committed to collective defense. Russia has pulled together more than 100,000 troops near Ukraine, the U.S. believes, and Moscow could order an attack at any time. While President Biden has said he would not send U.S. forces to Ukraine, the Harry S. Truman can effectively fortify NATO's eastern flank. Despite Russia's massive naval presence in the Black Sea, the carrier's F-18 jets can quickly reach the area close to Ukraine. The Truman's commander says years of integration with allies are now paying off.
We're committed to our alliances, our partnerships. We're able to operate plug and play anywhere in the world. And from an adversary point of view, we're agnostic. If we have the strong partnership, then that's stronger than any individual adversary could ever be.
The U.S. says Russia would pay a high price for any further invasion of Ukraine. And the Pentagon has just announced it will deploy additional U.S. troops to Germany, Poland, and to Romania.
The current situation demands that we reinforce the deterrent and defensive posture on NATO's eastern flank. President Biden has been clear that the United States will respond to the growing threat to Europe's security and stability.
But the U.S. and its allies say they hope diplomacy will prevail, as one of America's strongest deterrent forces remains on guard. Reflected.
Do you see it now? Do you see it now? U.S. defense to its workforce. Nuclear war can be won. The U.S. now think that Iran's nuclear program is too advanced, and they're going to respond to it. Russia accuses the U.S. of reigniting tensions with truth movements. Russia called this a destructive step that will worsen the standoff in Ukraine. They also said it would increase military tensions and reduce scope for political decision. But wait, there's more. British Norwegian warplane intercept Russian aircraft over North Sea again. Aircraft intercepted include long-range bombers and maritime patrol planes. And that is by NATO. Russia, US, French, UK warships spotted off the south coast of defense forces. Once again, what is going on? Russia is massing nuclear-capable missiles, 30,000 troops, and fighter jets in Belarus. NATO warns. Fears Ukrainian invasion could spark refugee crisis with 2 million people displaced. Wake up, guys. Shit's about to get real. If you're interested, stay and listen to this. So I had a World War III dream, right? And I haven't had one in a long time. I used to get them all the time, but I haven't gotten them in a while. But this one was different than the other ones because I was in Norway. And Sweden was giving us supplies. And I remember I was watching the news, and it was on CNN that Russia had attacked something. And I was like, wait, what the fuck? But it was like, it won't go nuclear, nothing will happen. And then somebody ran in and was like, hey, come look outside, look outside. And we look outside, we just see like the stars like shooting everywhere. And everybody's like, oh, look at all the shooting stars, wow. And I'm like, whoa. And it looks so real, it's like HD crystal clear. And all I remember is I was like, well, we're in a good area, they're not gonna hit over here. And I just see this big missile just fly right out of the sky. It falls in the water and blows up. And it was crazy, man.
Hours.
War News 24/7. So this is historic, folks. We are living in historic times right now. This is the biggest mobilization of military equipment since World War II in 80 years. It looks like the whole world is mobilizing their militaries for a war coming up very soon, and I don't know why this has changed screens on me. So hold on, we're going to see if we can get the article we just had there. Let's go here. Sometimes things happen. We are live, folks, so we can't really control what's going on too much. All right, so according to War News 24/7, colossal mobilization with 50 ships and the 5th Fleet blockade in the Straits in conflict with Iran and Russia. So let's go ahead and read this and clear my throat here. For the first time in the history of Israel, the country is participating in a colossal naval mobilization, typically the largest on the planet, with the participation of 60 countries in the Red Sea, the U.S. 5th Fleet, and NATO forces. So NATO has mobilized one of the biggest drills, that has taken place in the last 20 or 30 years. The exercise resembles a state of emergency with a regional conflict during which all countries involved must defend themselves against the common enemy. The map of the exercise is typical. The countries are divided into 5 task forces, 1 eastern, 1 southern, 1 western, and 1 northern. And also there is a mixed task force. According to the exercise map, these countries must defend themselves against a common enemy and protect all the straits of the sea. The Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz, the Gulf of Oman, the Suez Canal, and the entrance of the Mediterranean Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the Gulf of Aden, and the exit to the Indian Ocean. So NATO now is practicing, folks, with a 60 or with 50 ships in 5 different locations, protecting all of this waterways in an upcoming war. So everybody is mobilizing. It looks like their navies. Let's keep on going. 18-day war games with 50 ships.
War power leader demands Biden get congressional approval before military action against Russia. No action can be taken without congressional approval, letter states. Yeah, it's getting real. They're saying a hacking team tied to Russia targeted Western government entity and Ukraine researchers. U.S. sent military advisors and cybersecurity experts to Ukraine in recent months to help defend against Russian forces. He's saying that the Biden administration needs Congress before he can declare war, because we sent the troops to Eastern Europe. Guys, shit's getting bad. U.S. says Russia planned fake video as false flag to invade Ukraine. All they need is a false flag to start something, and they're all in position. Wake up. I wanted to see if my followers got it, but I guess nobody got it. They said that Biden needs Congress approval before military action against Russia, right? But there was something I talked about at the beginning of this year that they passed. This was something that was snuck into the defense bill, and it's for the U.S. to unveil a legal trigger for war with Russia. This was already on the Congress table, and it even said it was likely to pass. And this would be a legal way for the United States to declare war on Russia over Ukraine. Look at this. They want to mark Russia as a terrorist state if its forces further invade Ukraine. This bill already passed. It was thrown on the table on January 1st. The United States is fashioning a legal trigger for war with Russia over Ukraine, and its idiotic politicians are baiting one another into pulling it. So once again, y'all late. This one's on Newsweek. Exclusive. Ukraine crisis could lead to nuclear war under new strategy. 3,000 American troops are heading to Europe with thousands more on standby in response to Kremlin's threat against Ukraine. President Biden is pondering further actions, and as U.S.-Russia tensions rise, a new American nuclear war plan lurks in the background. Yeah, they're just throwing it in everybody's face now. Scenario for a war in eastern Ukraine. The United States views Russians just as the Nazis did in World War II. So, Russia met with China yesterday, right? And she now backs Putin on NATO demands as leaders meet in Beijing. President Putin and President Xi projected unity against Western interference in a thinly veiled joint statement. Both are engaged in military standoffs with the West. New plan. U.S. paratroopers land in Poland to deter Putin just hours after the U.S. accused him of a fake false flag plot to start a war by faking a Ukrainian genocide with graphic video of fake bodies. Are these guys already at war? 1,700 soldiers join roughly 4,000 that are already stationed across Poland. Putin and Xi close ranks against the West on Ukraine and Taiwan. President Putin and Xi close ranks against the United States and its allies on key security issues as they declare there is no limit and no forbidden zones in the friendship between Russia and China. Russia even opposed Taiwan's independence in any form. They even said they're both concerned about the AUKUS, security partnership formed by the US, Australia, and the UK, warning of a risk of an arms race in the Asian Pacific region. Lithuania is now asking Germany and the United States for more troops on its territory. Remember that gut feeling?
Say to our athletes, you're there to compete Do not risk incurring the anger of the Chinese government because they are ruthless. I know there is a temptation on the part of some to speak out while they are there. I respect that, but I also worry about what the Chinese government might do to their reputations, to their families.
The leaders of Russia and China have pushed back against pressure from the West and demanded an end to NATO's expansion. This comes amid growing tensions over the crisis in Ukraine. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has met with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Beijing. Both sides say their relationship is at a historical high point. They're pledging closer cooperation on energy supplies and on stemming major protest movements. The two leaders will later attend the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympic Games. Journalist Fabian Kretschmer is in Beijing and has been following the two leaders meeting. Fabian, Putin and Xi making a joint call to limit NATO expansion today. Sum up that message for us.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's really important to see that this statement contains 5,300 words. It's very lengthy. It's quite surprising that because most observers expected more a symbolic deal, energy deal, but this is really a strong political statement. They're against the NATO expansion. They basically blame the NATO for creating an ideological Cold War mentality, while of course I'm sure that, for example, the US would blame China and Russia exactly for doing the same, namely forming a bloc against the West. So I would say it's really a very strong political statement. And of course, we have...
Russia and China agreed to a 30-year gas deal via new pipeline to settle in euros. Told you guys, China and Russia do not have to rely on anybody. The only way they're going to fill anything is by force. Wow.
Mobilizing forces, Russia is mobilizing its forces, Europe's mobilizing its forces, NATO is putting everything on the table, it looks like. Then follows the Mediterranean. There's currently the USS Harry Truman, while the British aircraft carrier Queen Elizabeth, the HMS Prince of Wales, and the French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle are expected to arrive for other drills. The first scenario, which is being photographed by Israeli sources, is that a war preparation is due to Iran. The second scenario is that a global U.S. naval mobilization due to Russia is underway, and the Russian fleet is currently spread around the world. However, for the first time, Israel took part in the naval exercises with Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, the United States, in the Red Sea. Washington has integrated it into the Middle East military structure created by Middle East NATO. Folks, what we are witnessing is the early stages of World War III. Everyone is getting their chess places into place. Navies are activating. We have just sent 3,000 soldiers to Europe. And John Kirby said that tens of thousands could be leaving shortly besides that, folks. So this is just the start of the mobilization of the American military and NATO forces into Europe and around the world. We are gearing up for a massive world war. It does look like all nations will be involved. And if this war does happen, you can count on Iran attacking Israel, probably North Korea attacking South Korea, and maybe even China trying to take Taiwan at the same time. So it does look like this could be going down very, very shortly. We are mobilizing force.
Caught on camera, a British fighter jet tracking a Russian bomber close to UK airspace. The first of 2 RAF scrambles in as many days. A starring role for the Russian pilot too. This footage rather unusually released by Russia's defense ministry. State propaganda from the Cold War playbook, yet it was filmed this week as the Kremlin is locked in an increasingly heated contest with Western allies over Ukraine. Signalling strength from the ground as well. Russian troops training in Belarus close to Ukraine's border. Information and images like these used as a weapon of influence under the threshold of war. It's a tactic deployed by both sides. In fact, Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister said warnings by allies like the US and the UK about the threat of a new Russian invasion of her country was messing with Moscow's plans.
NATO does have a cyber defense force. And they wanted to include Ukraine into that. But Hungary, folks, listen to this. Hungary has just blocked the vote to allow Ukraine into NATO's Cyber Defense Center. Hungary vetoed NATO, blocking Ukraine's ascension to the CCDCOE, the NATO's Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, making it a matter of days before the EU Cyber Defense Rapid Reaction Force is activated. Apparently, the president of the European Commission, von der Leyen, knew very well what she was saying yesterday about activating the EU security clause. So, folks, we are going to war. This is something that they're only going to do during wartime, that all of the NATO countries now is on the verge of activating their Cyber Defense Center, which is an organization to monitor cyber attacks and also to do cyber attacks against other nations. Now, Hungary, the president...
Please explain what is going on at the White House. Please explain what is...
The military maneuvers in Belarus are in full swing, and as you can probably see behind my back, there is a tank column that is rolling towards its firing positions. Now, elsewhere on this training ground, which is, by the way, located next to the Belarus-Polish border, we're going to see aviation, motorized infantry units, paratroopers. So all in all, this is going to be a pretty intense and action-packed day, both for Russia's and Belarus's military. Now, this is a combat readiness task of a joint Russian-Belarusian task force. The military say the main goal here is to see how quickly they can deploy combat units in Belarus and secure key infrastructure as well as Belarus's land border and airspace. It's reported that 12 Russian Su-35 fighter jets, along with a number of air defense complexes, including S-400 Triumph, have been sent to Belarus from Russia to support these exercises. Now, the number of troops involved doesn't require the two countries to notify other nations, said Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. However, Russia did let everyone know, including NATO members, about the exercises in advance as a gesture of goodwill.
Moments ago, members of Congress getting a classified briefing on Russia and Ukraine from the nation's top military, diplomatic, and intelligence leaders. As the United States troops start to move into Eastern Europe, you can see that mobilization happening on the right-hand side of your screen there a moment ago. So now the Pentagon has confirmed also that Russia has a plan to pull off a false flag attack against their own, blaming it on Ukraine forces in order to justify the beginning of hostilities between the two countries. Congressman Lee Zeldin just out of that briefing. He joins us momentarily, but first, congressional correspondent Chad Pergram. Hi, Chad.
Good afternoon, Martha. Well, this is the first time lawmakers heard about the Russian threat from diplomatic and intelligence officials in a classified setting. Senator Lindsey Graham believes the briefing could unlock the votes to pass a muscular bipartisan sanctions bill directed at Russia.
So Putin's got to understand that I've never seen bipartisanship like this in a long time, really since after 9/11. Most members of Congress see this as a defining moment in the U.S.-Russian relationship.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi endorses muscular sanctions. She worries about the risks Russia poses to NATO allies.
So this is deadly serious. So they have to feel the pain, and it has to be felt right up to the richest man in the world, Vladimir Putin.
But there is starting to be a divide between liberals and the president over the course of action when it comes to troops, even if they don't see combat.
I think Congress has not been consulted sufficiently, and the executive authority to, whether it's move troops or send weapons or whatever it is, a lot of those things do need to have more congressional consultation.
Some on the left and the right say moving troops around is problematic. They want Congress to exercise its constitutional war powers. They say lawmakers sitting on the sidelines is what led former presidents to rely on old congressional authorization.
This is Dabu 7. There is a series of cyber attacks spread across the globe that are targeting certain places. We're talking farmers have been hit, hospitals have been hit, water facilities have been hit. Just in America, many places have been hit. When we look around the world now, we're seeing major energy sectors getting hit. Whoever's doing all this here on this world stage is running some beta runs right now in real time, and they're hitting the big-time energy sector. We just had Germany report that there was a big hack on their energy sector. Now, Belgium saying the same thing, that apparently a massive attack here has happened at least 2 different energy companies in the Belgian ports of Antwerp and Ghent. So
Russia continues large-scale military drills. This is video here from today of exercises in southwest Russia involving surface-to-air missiles, armored vehicles, and jets. And as tensions simmer between Moscow and the West over Ukraine, Russia and Belarus have been mobilizing thousands of personnel and military equipment. We are also seeing a show of force from the United States and Ukraine. Newsy's national correspondent Jason Bellini is here with a busy day of military movements on multiple fronts. Jason, hello.
Hi, Natalie. Well, you just mentioned these drills that are happening in Belarus involving the Russians and Russian leadership. But what I can tell you is, make no mistake, we're also seeing a show of force from the U.S. and Ukrainian sides as well.
The Ukrainian military on Friday showed U.S. soldiers training Ukrainians on how to use a weapon designed to destroy hardened bunkers. This video came the same day that the U.S. Army released images showing the first U.S. service members boarding planes for Europe, where they'll help bolster NATO forces. And NATO provided footage of its exercises at sea. F-18 fighter jets from the USS Truman aircraft carrier flew over the Baltic states in Poland and Romania. Not to be outdone, Russia is producing its own show of force. This is the opening act of combat readiness joint exercises in Belarus that are scheduled to continue for the next 2 weeks. This video was posted to the Russian Military TV YouTube channel for all to see.
This is intended to intimidate, to show off all of the capabilities that the Russians have.
Mark Kanthian, a retired U.S. Marine colonel and a professor of military operations, watched the video along with us.
Let's see what he's got. Oh, the rocket launcher. Yeah.
What would those rockets be used for?
The advantage of rockets is that, as you can see, you can fire a lot of them very quickly. So if you have a good target location, you can really smother it.
Tanks and armored personnel carriers show how rapidly they're able to advance across open terrain.
You can see those are armored personnel carriers. They're carrying troops. I mean, those would be highly vulnerable to javelins.
Javelin anti-tank missiles and launchers were part of a $200 million arms shipment the U.S. sent to Ukraine in January.
I don't care how many javelins you have.
East is now terribly rattled against the West. China we will fully support Russia against NATO. So this is a historic document that they have just signed, that China now has put their support 100% behind Russia. In case of Russia invades Ukraine, they will support them militarily, folks. So this is not only an economic agreement that they just signed, it is a military agreement with Russia to fight against NATO. So I'm sure the guys in Washington are shaking so hard that their red high heel shoes have fallen off and they missed the makeup on their lips. So anyway, I don't know if we can fight Russia and China at the same time, folks. Maybe we can. Maybe the United States has got these secret space weapons. We got laser weapons and Star Wars weapons and everything else, and the United States can take out both Russia and China in a matter of 10 minutes. Who knows, folks? Who really knows? But if this war is conventional, we're going to have a very hard time defeating Russia and China unless there is some super secret laser weapons or some weapons we don't know about or they use nuclear weapons. And in that case, nobody wins. The whole world will probably be plunged in a massive nuclear war. The East is now
Putin, who is here tonight, certainly has the world watching. Russia has amassed more than 100,000 troops on 3 sides of Ukraine. U.S. officials have threatened severe sanctions if Russia makes a move. I want to bring in Andy Brown, our China expert here. There is some precedent.
Global security and economic risks posed by further Russian aggression would be enormous, and they would have consequences not only on Ukraine, Europe, the transatlantic community, but on the PRC as well. If Russia thinks that it will be in a position to make up some of those consequences, to mitigate some of those consequences by a closer relationship with the PRC, that is not the case. It will actually make the Russian economy in many ways more brittle. If you look at, for example, where the major inputs to foundational technologies come from, they still come from the West. If you deny yourself the ability to transact with the West, to import with the West from Europe, from the United States, you are going to significantly degrade your productive capacity. We have an array of tools that we can deploy. If we see foreign companies, including those in China, doing their best to backfill U.S. export control actions, to evade them, to get around them. I wouldn't want to speculate on what those tools are, but we do have tools that can address that, and that would seek to account for that.
As Russia increases its military presence around Ukraine while denying it plans to attack, Russian President Vladimir Putin was in China today watching the Olympics opening ceremony and receiving support from the game's host, President Xi. In a joint statement with Russia, China said it opposed NATO expansion, blamed the United States for creating tensions, and expressed support for Russia's demand of security guarantees. Russia also vowed support for China's claims over Taiwan. In Ukraine, troops conducted military drills with new American weapons. While out in the Far East by Russia's border, troops told us pro-Russian separatists who could spearhead a Russian attack have stepped up artillery training.
Does that worry you that they're training for something?
I think because it's expensive, I think they prepared to something. To what? We don't know.
We are now very close to the Russian border, and Ukrainian troops out here tell us they are exercising maximum restraint so they don't give Russia an excuse to invade. For now, the front is quiet, but troops say they are prepared for a possible Olympic surprise.
With Russia over Ukraine, Vladimir Putin getting support from China's president as U.S. troops arrive in Eastern Europe. ABC's Patrick Reevell is on the ground in Kiev with the latest. Patrick, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, Russia and China projecting a united front in a meeting yesterday around the Olympics. And today, Poland is getting ready to receive more of the 1,700 U.S. paratroopers heading there, most of whom will start arriving from Sunday.
In the snow in western Ukraine, American soldiers training with Ukrainian troops, members of Florida's National Guard showing them the ropes with U.S.-supplied weapons. These bunker-busting rockets, part of the Biden administration's efforts to reinforce Ukraine amid fears of Russian invasion. The world is still waiting for Vladimir Putin to see what he will do with the tens of thousands of Russian troops massed on Ukraine's borders. Putin on Friday in Beijing to watch the opening of the Winter Olympics. But the main event for him, a meeting with China's President Xi Jinping. The two making a show of togetherness amid the tensions with the West. They released a joint statement afterwards backing Russia's demand for security guarantees that NATO will not expand. Back in Washington, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken continuing a U.S. push to deter Russia.
We're also here at a time of real concern for European security.
Blinken meeting with Poland's foreign minister hours after paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne touched down in the country. The first of 3,000 U.S. troops dispatched by President Biden to Europe to reassure NATO's eastern flank. But in
to see you this morning. I mean, do we think this is actually happening? Is he serious about going forward in 24?
I think everyone wants to know that, but actually, let me tell you what Trump has been doing, because it could be earlier than 2024 and not because the election will be overturned. Trump has been endorsing candidates in each of the different states. We're kind of fed up with the rhinos, which are Republicans in name only. And the other thing is that what people don't understand is that the U.S. is a republic. And in that, you have to think of it like we're 50 different countries. And so he wants to really support state legislatures and secretaries of state so that a lot of the problems that happened in 2020 can get cleared up. But this is the talk that has been going on for 6 or 7 months. And that is, right now, 29 Democrats in the House have said they're not running again. The prediction is we're going to take the House and the Senate. They're talking about Trump being the Speaker of the Senate, and then he will be able to impeach Biden and Harris, and he will be able to take over because he'll be third in line to do that. And this is a lot of the conservative commentators have been talking about this with a lot of detail. Dan Scavino, who handles his social media,
to see one and other places. The question is whether a Russian invasion, which does seem like it's going to happen very soon, whether that will provide some sort of cover for China to go into Taiwan. Do you think that might happen?
You certainly can't discount that, because at the same time the whole world has been focused on the Russia-Ukraine situation. China has continued to make military provocations like they did last year with lots of overflights, or not overflights, but flights very near the airspace of Taiwan. Direct warnings from high-ranking government officials that the U.S. risks war with China over the Taiwan issue. And look, it just, from a military perspective, if one side or the other goes, it makes a lot of sense for the other side to say, hey, this is our motion. So it is definitely a legitimate possibility.
Well, we're hearing some estimates about the cost to Putin and the cost to the world in terms of casualty figures now from some of our Russia watchers if they have a full invasion of Ukraine. And now they're thinking, you know, he may feel free to go all the way to Kiev, to the capital, and just take over the whole thing. 5,000 to 25,000 Ukrainian troops killed or wounded, 4,000 Russian troops killed, an estimated 25 to 50,000 military families, including my own, by the way, get very nervous, particularly after Afghanistan, at looking at troop movements and moving our own troops closer to where the fire is about to begin. Is there any danger of U.S. troops being drawn into all this?
Well, there's an absolute danger. That's one of the things I've been arguing about, that, you know, we're sending over 3,000 troops up closer to the border. And frankly, these are light infantry troops, so the 82nd Airborne and a Stryker brigade. And those are the lightest skin vehicles. Even if you fought, I mean, you're talking Russia has high mechanized forces that are very well trained, and lots of them, and we wouldn't stand any chance. So, but the fact that you're moving them closer, but you probably have no intent to use them, God forbid that the president should actually send infantry into an armored fight. All you do is raise the chance of miscalculation and error actually causing a fourth. So this is not a good move, and it doesn't deter Putin, and it doesn't help us.
Colonel, very quickly, we only got 20 seconds. I don't want to scare anybody, but Putin's supposedly also shifted some nuclear exercises to February from what was supposed to happen in the coming fall. Should that be of a concern to us?
It always is. And that's one of the main things I've been warning about for months now, is the possibility that if anything goes sideways, the nuclear escalation is definitely there and on the table, and this just highlights it.
Dangerous times. Colonel Danny Davis, good to talk.
Countdown. Russian Marines and paratroopers on alert. Impact aircraft and S and P are relocating. The Russian Marines stationed near the Kerch Strait, the Black Sea Fleet headquarters, and other Russian forces reached the highest level of military readiness a few hours ago. This fact is confirmed by the commander of the Ukrainian army. Surprise, Russia imposes no-fly zone over Ukraine and Poland, 7 kilometers off the Polish border. Russia created a no-fly zone over the whole Ukraine and at least half of Poland as it transported and activated S-400 battalions carrying 400 kilometers, 40 and 6 anti-aircraft missile. The West fears the implementation of this informal no-fly zone and a possible strike on spy planes that will gather information on Russia's next moves. Things are getting wild. Russia locates NATO targets in Europe. Russia transports nuclear missiles to Belarus. Tu-22M3 on strike mission. Very serious and dangerous developments for the Euro-Atlantic security are taking place as Belarus and Russia have agreed on a new military doctrine, with Minsk being transferred again into a mega nuclear base. Wow, but there's more. According to credible information, Belarus will soon renounce the Budapest Memorandum, putting an end to the country's neutrality and denuclearization regime that has been enforced until now. Which I did find an article on that for them to rewrite their constitution so they could hold nuclear weapons. Anyways, this means that NATO bases in Europe as well as EU member states will be within minutes within nuclear range. Two of these Russian nuclear bombers have launched virtual strikes against Ukraine, Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states. Russia
rocket launchers for this SS-25 nuclear missile. All Russia has to do is transport these missiles back to Belarus, put them in their nuclear silos, and Belarus will be able to launch nuclear weapons anywhere in Europe. This is a major development. This is breaking news coming in from War News 24/7, and we are reporting this morning. In any case, Leshchenko moved quickly to remove the relevant restrictions from the Belarusian constitution. The current constitution, Article 18.2, is as follows. The Republic of Belarus aims to make its territory a nuclear-free zone and to make the state neutral. This no longer exists. So it does look like that Belarus will be hosting Russian nuclear weapons by the end of the month if this constitutional amendment is approved. So this is the some of the Russian nuclear bombers that just made joint patrols. Let's go ahead and play this real quick for you guys. And I don't know why it's not playing yet. So let's go down to another one. They have actually 3 videos of this. So let me reset this one. These are the Russian strategic nuclear bombers right here. Let me mute this. That was just sent to Belarus. Now, these kind of look like the Tu-160, but they call these the backfire bombers. These can carry nuclear missiles and the supersonic missiles that can reach Mach 4. So let's watch this video real quick about the 2 nuclear strategic bombers. Now, this is one of the bombers that NATO fears because they can go so fast, and carry a lot of weapons to bomb NATO bases. Now, it does look like Russia is not only getting ready to invade Ukraine, but they're getting ready to fight NATO also, folks. They have been deploying troops all over. They have sorted over 140 naval warships into all the oceans. That's the Pacific.
Look, I respect your opinion, and this ain't no disrespectful video or anything, but We are talking about NATO versus Russia and China. NATO versus Russia and China. China has about, 400 nukes spread throughout their country. The United States has about 6,100 to 200 nukes estimated in our country, spread out. And that's not even including on the submarines and everything. And then Russia has 6,800 spread out. So, we would go into a full-blown nuclear war if we're talking about attacking nuclear sites. We would be into a full-blown nuclear war. They're already testing each other. They're already deploying nukes. Russia's deploying nukes close to NATO. NATO's deploying nukes closer to Russia. United States just put hypersonic missiles in Germany. I get that you're trying to bring down the fear, but I'm trying to inform people that we are in danger. Are you sure about that, buddy? Because this obviously says the U.S. to its workforce, nuclear war could be won. And the United Kingdom is warning people of a nuclear attack. So I wouldn't be so sure to trust your own government. Look what Ukraine is warning now. Russia's last warning to NATO will be with nuclear weapons. Top U.S. military and intelligence officials say Russia plans to launch a major nuclear weapons exercise in February 2022 as a warning to NATO not to intervene if Vladimir Putin decides to invade Ukraine. These drills wasn't even supposed to happen till the fall. Now they're going on this month. But hold on. Mediterranean and Atlantic episodes? Russian fleet fires off British shores? French locks Moscow ship? France, Britain, US, Russia. Confrontation is off the British coast as a battle group of 5 Russian Navy warships gathered in the area along with unknown numbers of submarines for exercises with rail fire. Wow. Check this out. They say the British, American, French, and Russian ships are walking distance from each other. Oh boy. What if I told you that America was heading down something very deep? What if I told you that the rise of gas prices and the rise of food and the disappearance of things of your shelves and stuff was for a bigger purpose? What if I told you there was something they were hiding from you for the last 2 years? And what if I told you that half of our, way more than half of our citizens is not even prepared for what is really about to happen? What if I told you 2 weeks ago that there was an attack on Tonga? Would you believe me? That there was an attack on a volcano? Why would that happen? To send a clear message to the world that there's something way bigger coming that we can't even fathom or comprehend. And believe me, you better be ready for this ride because our ancestors, they know. The ones that lived through the times of the Cold War already know. We don't. And that's the scary part because we're okay with it.
What would happen if the largest country on Earth decided it needs more territory and power? Well, it might just go to war over it. What country could Russia invade first? What would be the plan of attack? And what's the most dangerous weapon in Russia's possession? This is What If? And here's what would happen if Russia started a war. Russia already takes up 1/8 of all the inhabited land on the planet. And now it has its eyes on one of its European neighbors, Ukraine. Historically, Ukraine and Russia have been in conflicts before. Most recently, Russia annexed the Ukrainian peninsula Crimea. And then it backed a separatist rebellion in eastern Ukraine. Now, Russia doesn't want Ukraine cozying up to NATO. It wants NATO out of Eastern Europe, period. And even though Russia isn't a member of NATO to make decisions on such things, with one of the most powerful militaries in the world, Russia might feel like it can play by its own rules. Okay, let's back up a little. First, you might be wondering what NATO is. Well, NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And right now, it includes 30 members. The United States, Canada, Netherlands, and the United Kingdom are among them. NATO's goal is to keep the peace and make sure no member of this alliance gets invaded by an international military force. You know, like that time Russia took Crimea from Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is not yet a member of NATO, but it has shown interest in joining it. And that doesn't sit well with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin is already a little freaked out that NATO is training Ukrainian troops and some members are supplying its army with weapons. So he's decided to go about it with the good old method of persuasion. He's threatening to start a war. Now, with a defense budget of $42 billion, Russia puts a lot of love and money into its military. Russia's army counts 3.5 million recruits. Russia's army counts 3.5 million recruits. And it has tanks. 13,000 of them. No other country in the world has this many. Russia also has 27,000 armored vehicles and ranks first in the world with its 4,465 artillery guns. And then there's also Russia's nukes to worry about. All 6,257 of them. These can be launched from aircraft, subs, or missiles. But if Russia decided to attack, chances are it wouldn't start on land. No, the first strike would likely come from the air. This could level electricity stations and bridges, obliterate rail lines, and cripple the economy of any country attacked. In addition to this, Russia's naval fleet is nearly unmatchable. Their nuclear-powered submarines alone, parked along a coastline, could pose enough of a threat to anyone thinking about taking them on. Depending who the targeted country is, of course. If Russia attacked Ukraine, NATO would likely respond with heavy economic sanctions. But Russia has allies of its own. It's a member of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, or CSTO. This is a group of 6 former Soviet states in a NATO-like alliance. It also has Cuba in its corner. And if things should get really testy, Cuba would be a key hub for Russian troops looking to do some damage on U.S. soil. It's pretty scary when 100,000 Russian troops are standing on your doorstep. But this likely wouldn't be a war to wipe out the country. Chances are Russia has something to gain from it. It might be natural resources or political leverage. Whatever it is, the plan wouldn't be to obliterate every target in its way, only to do enough damage to make their point. In the case of Ukraine, it could shut down the Ukrainian economy. But they could do that with minimal forces on the ground. War is also not fought the same way it was even a decade ago. It can be much more covert. Hack attack, anyone? Now, if you worry about those Russian nukes, well, I might have an idea of how to rid the world of them. How about nuking a volcano?